When Blizzard first released Sombra's gameplay trailer, I made a video that took a closer look at Sombra's abilities, her potential counters, and what her release would mean for the metagame. Now that Sombra has spent a few days on the PTR, I think it's worth taking another look to see whether she feels balanced in the current meta, what some of her counters are, and her impact on the game as a whole. If you haven't seen my previous video, you may want to take a moment to watch it by clicking the annotation on the screen or the link in the description. It's not necessary for understanding this video, but may help put some of my thoughts into clearer context. I think one of the first questions we have to ask is whether or not Sombra is balanced compared to the game's other heroes. Before her release, many players, myself included, worried that Sombra would be too overpowered on release and predicted she may need a nerf before she left the test server. However, after spending a few hours getting used to her playstyle and mechanics, I feel that Sombra is at about the same power level as Overwatch's other offense heroes, in every aspect but her ultimate. I'm looking at just her regular abilities here. I'll come back to Sombra's ultimate later. As far as playstyle, Sombra is very similar to Tracer in the sense that she's good at both poking to get in some added damage and diving teams in order to eliminate vulnerable targets such as healers. She has the same disengage potential because of her freedom of mobility. However, I don't feel that Sombra is any more or less powerful than Tracer in terms of her basic abilities, she just functions a little bit differently. In all honesty, Sombra is harder to play. Unlike Tracer, you can't just dive in on a whim with Sombra. Her abilities require a bit of forethought, especially since her camo and hacking abilities are disrupted by taking damage. An effective Sombra should engage a target unseen in order to effectively utilize her abilities, which requires specific positioning that Tracer doesn't necessarily need. Sombra does have 50 more health than Tracer, but this compensates for the fact that Tracer's recall can restore lost health, while Sombra's translocator does not. To add to the comparison, both Sombra and Tracer's weapons function similarly. Their guns have lower damage, but with a higher fire rate and a relatively fast reload animation. Both are certainly more effective up close than they are at a distance, though they can still help from afar by poking and harassing the enemy team. Though on a basic level Sombra is comparable to other offense heroes, her ult is what gives her an edge on the competition. It's just so incredibly strong when utilized correctly and can set up game-changing wombo combos. Her ult leaves enemies vulnerable in a similar fashion to Mei, Zarya, or Reinhardt's ults, but while enemy teams can usually see those three ults coming or can position themselves to avoid them, a good Sombra can camo in and immediately ult, leaving little time for reaction. Teams that group up will set themselves up for failure. As I mentioned in my previous video, there are some obvious counters to Sombra. I already made my case for Winston and Mei, but I need to add a few more contenders to the mix. Symmetra actually does a decent job countering Sombra due to her turrets, which make it very difficult for Sombra to execute a hack. Widowmaker's Infrasight allows her team to see a Sombra in camo, making the hacker particularly vulnerable for the duration of the ult. Additionally, Junkrat can use his trap to counter Sombra's flanking potential. The movement speed boost of her camo means she will have more trouble seeing and avoiding traps, and once she's stuck she can't use her translocator to teleport away. This isn't a definitive list by any means and will more than likely change over time, but these 5 appear to be some of the more viable counters to a pesky Sombra. After comparing Sombra to her fellow offensive heroes and taking a look at some of her counters, only one question remains: how will Sombra change the game? Since she feels as powerful as other offense heroes but has an ult that gives her an edge, I can see her becoming a top-tier offensive pick at both the casual and the pro level. The strength of her ultimate, especially its shield stripping aspect, may have a serious impact on current top-tier picks, such as Zarya, Reinhardt, and Lucio. We'll just have to wait and see how she changes competitive comps on the PTR, and whether those changes carry over to other servers. That's pretty much all I have to say for now. I may take one last look at Sombra once she leaves the PTR and hits the main game. Have any thoughts on Sombra that I didn't cover in this video? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear other thoughts and speculations regarding Overwatch's newest hero. Thanks for watching, and until next time.